What up, what up, what up? Welcome to this special edition of New Orleans Basketball. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Getting close to that time, man. And rumors are still swirling. People are being traded around, and it is quite the off season start to the off season. So let's get into what might be going on tomorrow.
Yeah, man. I mean, before we jump into tomorrow and the draft, Wimby's came over. Wimby's making his tour across ESPN, things like that. Things are starting to get excited. Kristaps Porzingis might be going to Boston. Like, what do you think about that? Like, we talked on the last episode. Phoenix were like, "Hey, we got work by Jokic. Let's get in a shooting guard." Boston was like, "Hey, we kind of got beat up in the trenches. Let's go get somebody who can help us on offense and defense." What are your thoughts on KP to Boston?
That's a tough acquisition. That is a very sneaky up there for probably one of the best moves of the offseason already, even again. And then for the reported trade to be them getting rid of a guard in Malcolm Brogdon and not Robert Williams. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, are they going to replace, Al Horford's role in the starting lineup with Kristaps Porzingis? Is this a Robert Williams Porzingis pairing? If so, that is they are there's going to be some injury caveats if healthy going on there. But I mean, they were already they lost to the Heat, and people thought that they were the best team in the NBA, top to bottom as far as roster talent. And now adding Kristaps Porzingis, I mean, that is quite the move for Brad Stevens.
Yeah, man. Boston's reloading, and a lot of people are. So before we jump into we breaking down and previewing the draft, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at NO Basketball No E. Follow us on IG NO Basketball No E. Like the episode below, and most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Network, New Orleans Basketball, New Orleans Football, anything with New Orleans at the front. So with that being said, tomorrow's the draft, bro. And there's a lot of speculations, a lot of rumors, yes, a lot of everything going on right now. With that being said, there's always some unexpected things that happen on draft day. And so I want to go through this exercise with you. Let's say you either get to pick up the phone or somebody calls you. What is the one trade you would be looking either to move down, to move up, to move out, and make a big trade and impact this roster? Now, you have to explain why it would work for both sides. I think so many people are like, well, here's my trade. I'm just going to trade you these scraps, because obviously that's what the other teams want. It has to be an explanation for why it works for both sides. Give me the call. Who you making it to?
Well, I think, this is a great question, because I'm sure, most trades that may happen, tomorrow, like, we don't even know about those. It's about who gets on the clock and what's available at that time, as opposed to like what may have been on the draft board and things like that. So I think I'm gonna take in the words of LeBron, take my talents to South Beach, right? So if you look at the Miami Heat and you look at the run that they just made, and to the finals. During the regular season, Duncan Robinson didn't get any playing time for the team. And, he was pushed away in the rotations by Max Strus, and then the emergence of Gabe Vincent and guys like that. And then you saw Caleb Martin and his ascension, and, he's going to be looking to get a contract after next season. So there's a lot of moving parts, and the Heat do very well with drafting and even finding undrafted guys, similar to the Pelicans, and finding undrafted gems and lower drafted guys and things like that. And so, if I'm looking at that roster, and I'm looking at the Pelicans roster, and I'm saying, okay, this is a lot. There's a lot of money being invested into Duncan Robinson, who has 1 year left as an expiring contract. But they have a replacement in Max Strus. They're building around Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, and obviously Jimmy Butler being the guy. But I think a trade, right? A trade for Duncan Robinson, where the Heat would get, JV, Kyra, and a couple of picks, right? And so when I think about JV, and again, we've talked about, JV's fit versus the player that he is. JV is a phenomenal center, a phenomenal player, and has a lot of value with a lot of teams in the league. But for the Pelicans, for whatever reason, he just seems to not be able to be, utilized in ways utilized in ways that are comfortable for him and conducive to him consistently, right? You see it for a couple of times and then they go away from it and things like that. And so if with the Heat situation, Bam Adebayo, for as great as he is, he's very small. He's an undersized center, and we saw it play out in the finals, right? When Nikola Jokic, who has his way with everybody, but particularly Bam didn't really have a shot to do much of anything, and he's one of the best defenders in the league. But at least with a guy like JV. And the Heat have been drafting centers, trying to find the guys to put behind Bam and maybe play Bam more at the four. And Nikola Jovic, Omer Yurtseven, they've been looking for guys to play that backline center behind Bam Adebayo, and really haven't been able to figure that out. And so with JV, I think that gives them a bigger, burlier guy. It allows in a matchup with like Joel Embiid or a matchup with Nikola Jokic, Bam can play kind of that off-ball defender, that roamer. Obviously, we know JV's limitations as far as switching defensively, but for a big burly guy, he can push around Jokic. I think we've seen JV kind of not be bullied by Jokic. Obviously, he scores around him and things like that, but not be pushed underneath the goal the way Bam Adebayo does. And for the Heat, for the Pelicans, you overpay for shooting that is established, right? Established movement shooting, high volume guy, and you overpay for what that is coming with the Pelicans. I mean, what is coming from Duncan Robinson. And so I think that's a good trade. Obviously you're throwing Kyra, who may become their version of another Gabe Vincent and his development. Maybe there's more time for them to develop Kyra underneath those guys. In the draft picks to kind of sweeten up the deal. Everybody is looking for draft capital. And so I think that's a trade that benefits, both parties involved. Obviously you hate to see a guy like JV go, and this trade like this would be like contingent on if like Derek Lively is there for the Pelicans, or if they find another big man that they like in free agency or something like that. But like I said, Duncan for JV, Kyra, and a couple of second round picks, I think that might be something that benefits both teams in the short term as well in the long term, when both of the contracts run out and they can make the decisions there.
I can see it, right? Like Bam turns into the Giannis-like role next to Brook Lopez, right? The help defender,
Aaron Gordon,
right? That makes it very difficult next to him. So I've got similar players, and everyone's going to say, well, you just want to trade the players that aren't getting usage. But I think it makes sense. Now, instead of going down to South Beach like LeBron, I'm going to go to the 6 like Drake. So I'm looking at Gary Trent in Toronto. There's rumors that, he opted out of his contract. They want to work on a long-term contract. But again, I just think at some point, Toronto has to look themselves in the mirror and be like, this ain't it. Like, has to give. And in that situation, like, obviously they made the trade for Jakob Poeltl. He was a good fit there. But are they willing to invest a lot into the same team that they have today, knowing that it's not taking them far? And so I would go to them and say, before you work out that long-term deal with Gary Trent, I got to protect it first for him, because who knows if you're willing to pay him 4 for 80, 3 for 60, whatever it may be, knowing the risk around your roster. Fred VanVleet probably leaving, opting out. I've got a young player in Kyra. I've got JV, who used to play for you, so he's on an expiring contract as well. So he could be a bridge gap to your next center that plays alongside the rest of Siakam if they keep him. Who knows what the Raptors do over the next couple of days as OG rolls into a bigger offensive role. That's some area that he can play as well. There's more shots for him as well. I think with Kyra, a JV, and a protected first, you're putting enough risk out there for the Pelicans, saying that, like, hey, this could be a rental, right? Like, you don't know if you're going to invest another $20 million and go into the luxury tax next year, keeping Gary Trent. But, man, that guy shot 37% for the three-point line. He was 7th in the NBA in steals per game. Like, that's the perfect fit to insert into this lineup, into this rotation, because he not only gives you something on the offensive end where you're severely lacking, but he doesn't slouch you on defense. If anything, he upgrades your defense altogether as well. So, like, that's a player I'd be willing to spend a little extra, not because I think Gary Trent's going to turn into the next superstar, but because of the fit on this team. I'd be willing to take that risk. So that would be my trade if I picked up the phone. Who knows? Again, Griff really values his assets, so the likelihood that he's giving anything away is very low there. So over the weeks, the different mocks and things like that have had the Pelicans all over the board. But lately, it's been a lot of the names that we talked about, right? So my question to you, we've talked about a lot of people. We've looked at a lot of prospects. We understand that rim protection and shooting the three ball are the two weaknesses of this team, BI and Zion or not. In your mind, is it you walk up to the podium and they're all available? Is it Jordan Hawkins? Is it Derek Lively? Or is it the field at this point?
We've gone back and forth on this, bro, for a while, and I think that for me it's got to be one of those two guys, or I think you look to trade back. Listen, the situation with Jordan Hawkins and Derek Lively, I mean, they literally fit hand in glove into the things that the Pelicans need, right? Elite shooting, and from one prospect, and rim protection, athleticism at the rim, and the other prospect in Derek Lively. And I think when you think about the extremes that the Pelicans need, and if you're going to draft a guy here, and there are these extremes available, right? So Jordan Hawkins took double the amount of 3-pointers per game. Then 2-pointers per game in his college career, which is insane when you think about it, right? And he shot an astronomical amount on catch and shoot threes. He's a confident shooter, a cocky shooter, and he's a guy that you have to know where he is at all time. And I'm thinking about times where he's on the floor with Trey Murphy and Zion and Brandon Ingram, and it's just like, there's so many guys you have to account for who can score from so many different places on the floor. I just think that's the kind of skill set that you want to add, especially if you're not trying to find that next building block of your franchise. You have those available. You want this pick skill to complement your stars, and I think that Jordan Hawkins walks into the NBA like that. And the same thing for Derek Lively with his rim protection, his effort and going for every single block, and just his athletic ability, the verticality that he brings. I just think that, behind Zion and Brandon Ingram and those guys, you want to have a guy that they feel comfortable that if they get beat, they can push up. And if they get beat, you have a guy that's going to, protect the rim, and anything that comes close to that. And so when you think about those two, those are like the outstanding prospects for me when it comes to the draft. And then after that, I think my next step after that would be the field, right? Just play, to trade back. There are opportunities to find guys that aren't those two, that are very similar, and guys that'll be in around that area of the draft. So you could, potentially gather some more draft assets, maybe get off a contract that the Pelicans don't see fit. But I think 1, 2, 1A, 1B is Hawkins and Lively. And then anything after that, for me personally, I think it's the field. Go ahead and trade back and look at other prospects who might be able to bring in similar value, but also pick up something else on the way there.
I'm going to stick with what I said before the season ended. Whoever was the Jalen Duren of this draft, you need to go draft him. And that is Derek Lively. Because when the Pelicans had all their guns and were number one in the West, nobody said anything about the Pelicans being able to score on offense. But everyone looked at it and was like, man, when they get to the playoffs, who is protecting the rim? Nobody said anything about shooting it. I understand shooting is a need. But when you got a guy who's on the court who averaged 27 points or 6% shooting and has the type of gravitational pull that he has, shooting becomes a lot easier for everybody else. Like, Brandon Ingram turns into more of a shooter because he has more wide open ability. Same thing with CJ. Same thing with Trey. All the other guys that don't specialize in shooting get a little bit better at shooting when you play with a guy like that. I'm not saying you don't address shooting. I just think rim protection is something that you need no matter what. Look at the Celtics. Everybody hands down would say that, hey, they're maybe the most talented team in the league. They could ever figure out how to not to dribble off their legs in game 7. Like they have so much talent. Guess what they went to go do? Add a rim protector, right? Like, what do the Bucks have? Giannis, one of the best defensive players in this generation. They have Brook Lopez. Like, you gotta have somebody to protect. Even Jokic in the Heat series, nobody talks about Jokic for his defense, but he made it difficult on Jimmy Butler every time he got to the goal. You gotta have someone that people fear once they get past their line of scrimmage, and I just think that that's such a big need for this team. And the things that Derek Lively does well are the things that, again, he's not a perfect player. He's not really developed on an offensive game. But damn it, he don't need it if those other two are on the court. Just stand next to the goal and wait for your opportunities to catch lob. And he's bigger than a Jackson Hayes. So people are like, oh, well, he's young. He's 19. He get thrown around like Jackson. He's already 230. Like, he's going to fill into his frame even more.
It's a little different. Yeah, it's a little different.
And he has the athletic ability. Not quite to Jackson Hayes level, but it's up there, right? Like, there was a reason why he was the top prospect in his class. So, like, for me, it's Derek Lively. The best shooter in the draft. Like, if you can't get that, if you can't get the best rim protector, get the best shooter, right? At 14, beggars can't be choosers. You're not looking at perfect player. You're not looking at all-stars. You're looking at what fits your team and what is the most value. So I'm looking at one of those players. You know, we talked about Kobe Buffkin. He canceled his workout. He wants to go before that, right? Like, and again, I never really see the fit because he's a ball dominant guard. And I don't know how you're going to be ball dominant on this team. You got Wemby's teammate that is rising up draft boards. People are talking a lot about him in terms of his athleticism and things like that. I don't know, bro. I just don't know if those players give you the same things that Hawkins or Lively do. And so I kind of agree with you in terms of those being the top two selections. Outside of that, let's look at some trade down candidates. So who would be the people that if the Pelicans say, hey, our guy, whoever their guy isn't there, let's go ahead and try to see if we can recoup some assets similar to how they did with the Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe trade.
So for me, I think, we talked about this prospect in our wing breakdown. It's going to be Chris Murray from Iowa. I think that, when we talk about, not having the best shooter in Jordan Hawkins or the best rim protector in Derek Lively, not being able to, if you're not being able to get either one of those, I think you get somewhere in the middle with Chris Murray. I think, he's a guy that can come in and kind of contribute in a multitude of ways that the Pelicans could use him. We've talked about his ability to shoot from the 3-point line and get really, really hot from there and knock down a bunch over and over again. And then we also talked about his defensive prowess, how he's able to, kind of play 1 through 4 and even some small ball 5 if you needed him to. So there's a lot of different things that he could come in and do. And I think that he'll be available probably further down as you go, just because I think, he has some things that, other players do better. He's not the best shooter. He's not the best rim protector, but he can give you a little bit of both all in one prospect. And so I think that if you get to a point where, Derek Lively or Jordan Hawkins, obviously for us, if you get to that point and they're not there, if you can find a way to go down a couple of spots, get some more draft assets that you can turn around, even if it's some seconds to go along with, their pick and maybe getting off a contract. I think that Chris Murray is a viable candidate to kind of go down there and fit some of those issues that the Pelicans saw last season and kind of also be a little bit of insurance for, if Larry Nance does get hurt and maybe EJ Liddell takes a little longer to come around or whatever the case is, he'll be the insurance for kind of that small ball lineup that the Pelicans like to use. And if you need to play him at the 5, he's comfortable playing there as well.
My guys are Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine, a wing. So 35% from 3. on 4 shots per game. Again, you got to look for people that can shoot the ball. He has a good defensive upside. He's very athletic. Like he jumps out the gym, and his athleticism helps with blocks and things like that. He does have a tendency to fall asleep on defense. He does has a tendency to take some errant shots, let's call it that. But the guy has one of those shots where every time you see him shoot it, you think it's going in. Like he is deadly from certain spots where he just doesn't miss. I looked at a couple of his draft comparisons. Short Trey Murphy. Could Pelicans use another Trey Murphy, right? Like he's a 6'6". He doesn't have the height that Trey does, but he has that shooting ability and the ability to draw gravity wherever he is on the court. My other guy also happens to be a shooter. Do you hear the theme? So Ben Shepherd from Belmont, the guard, 6'6", again, not an undersized player, more of a wing player, shooting 42% from three. And things like that. Like on 6 shots per game, like he got a chopper. He's a movement shooter. So if you miss out on a Jordan Hawkins, you miss out on a Derek Lively, he's their next best option. Here's where I really like him: 1.4 steals per game. Like he's got the chops. He was all defensive in his conference. You got the ability to defend and you got the ability to shoot. One of the draft comparisons I saw was Garrett Temple. And again, Garrett Temple, right? So a 3-and-D player, that's what they specialize in. Like I think that type of role is necessary for this team. And so if they were to trade back, Maxwell Lewis, Ben Shepherd, those would be the guys I'd be looking at late in the first, earlier second, things like that. Do you have another one that is top of mind that if those guys aren't there, you want to trade back, recoup some things? Let's take a shot at him.
Yeah, just to continue on with your theme of shooting, because the Pelicans need shooting. I think another guy that is willing, you should be willing to look back for. I know you said that Kobe Buff can kind of cancel his workout because he wants to go early. I say go with his teammate Jet Howard, another guy we talked about in the guard breakdown. Just a knockdown shooter, a guy who can, if he's open, it's probably a bucket. A couple of player comps I saw of him was a shorter Duncan Robinson and things like that, because this guy can, it's if it's up, it's going in. But he can kind of put the ball on the floor, and he has a little bit of playmaking chops, and I think his ability to knock down shots is something that will translate to the NBA rather quickly, because he's just that good of a shooter, and he's very easy to kind of plug in and play. You kind of see with the gravity that all the other guys have, just an easy pathway for him to get out there and contribute really, really hard. So I think for me, it'll be Chris Murray and Jet Howard, and I kind of like your 2 picks as well, especially the guard from Belmont. I think there's some real value there if that's something that the Pelicans would like to go and look for.
So the Pelicans don't have a second-round pick. Again, they traded a gazillion second-round picks to acquire Josh Richardson, so they just have the one. But history has shown you that the Pelicans don't just stop there. Similar to the Saints, they're always looking for those undrafted free agents that turn out to be gems, a la Jose Alvarado, a la Najee Marshall. Those guys are rotation players after everybody looking over them. So my question to you is, who is that next guy? Who is that guy that, again, as this roster becomes more expensive, you're going to lose good players because they're going to make money somewhere else and you won't have the ability to pay them and keep them. So you have to consistently be looking for players on cheap contracts like Najee, like a Herb Jones, like a Jose, where maybe you secure their services in the late second round, you trade back up, or when they become undrafted. Tell me a player you like that might be an uncovered gem that might be helpful for this Pelicans team.
Yeah, I've been doing some searching, and I think I found 2 for you. So both of these guys I think would be a little higher as far as like where they're slotted to be drafted. But they're both 23 years old, and we all know how the NBA feels about older draft prospects and things like that. But the Pelicans have found really good value in older guys, and meaning like Herb Jones and Jose, finding those undrafted guys who've played and things. So my first one is going to be Seth Lundy. He's a 6'6", 220-pound guard forward-ish. He has a 6'10" wingspan. He went to Penn State. So last season he averaged 14 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, but he shot 40% from the 3-point line, and with on a lot of volume, right? He shot a lot of threes. So he's a 4-year player, and he started 96 games. So this is a guy who's experienced, a guy who's has a lot of trust from his coach to play that many games. He scored over 1,200 points in his career. So the guy can fill it up and get buckets, things like that. On catch and shoot, he shot 42%, which is one of the best in college basketball. I think he was a phenomenal shooter, and he doesn't look to play outside of his game. He's a guy that knows exactly what his role is to catch and shoot. He's not trying to put the ball on the ground and turn into an and one mixtape. And I think that his basketball IQ, along with his experience, when you talk about needing kind of, older guys or veterans, or, just guys who have played a lot of basketball, this is a guy that fits that mold. He's a big burly guy, so he uses his body very well defensively. And I just think that he'd be a good undrafted guy if you want to look at signing him, or even in the late second rounds. And then my last guy is going to be Hunter Tyson, another 23-year-old, 6'8", 210 forward from Clemson. He's tenacious, right? 15.3 points per game, 9.6 rebounds per game last season, 40% three-point shooter on 7 attempts a game. So he got him up, and he shot a very good percentage of that. Like I said, he's very tenacious. He goes after every single board, every single loose ball he's running behind. He had 16 double-doubles last season, which is 11th in the NCAA, in the NCAA, which shows you that he's a workhorse, that he's trying to get to those 10 rebounds, and you want that kind of commitment to the dirty work and things like that. And he's a true knockdown shooter at, like I said, 40% on 7 attempts a game. I mean, he was getting a lot of open shots, and he was knocking them down. And so I think that he's a guy that could come in and again contribute to, like I said, with Chris Murray, kind of contribute to a little bit of everything: shooting, defense, rebound, and with a 6'10" wingspan, I think he could come in and do some things for the Pels. So Seth Lundy from Penn State and Hunter Tyson from Clemson is my 2 guys to look for as undrafted or second round gems and steals.
I gotta cheat a little bit here. I gotta go with an honorable mention. Like, I got 2 as well, but I got a guy that I kept watching. Like, I'm like, oh man, like they gotta find a spot. They gotta find a spot for him. So Patrick Garner out of Morris is my honorable mention. Center, 6'11" dude. Like, I watch his tape and I'm like, big guard. Like, he literally is dribbling around the court like he's Alfred Sengun, like he's Jokic. But at the same time, he's also able to kind of muck it up and got post moves as well. He shot 33% from the 3-point line, and he's kind of got a little wiggle to him at 6'11". So he's not super athletic. So that's probably why he's not getting drafted. He's not super great on defense or anything like that. Like, he's not rim protecting or anything like that. But I just like his game. And like, if the Pelicans find someone who is really invested in Willie, which again, I can see happening, and having him get a bigger role somewhere else and using him as a trade bargain, I wouldn't mind taking a shot at Patrick Gardner and looking at what he could be as your third center off the bench. My other guys, I got Justin Powell from Washington State, and I got Landers Noley from Cincinnati. Both of them are just lockdown shooters. One of them draft comparison was a shorter Duncan Robinson at 6'6", and the other one has a chopper. Literally, he does the D-Wade pump fake. Everyone stands and he shaves it right in your face. And like, that's the type of arrogant shooter that the Pelicans need. And again, neither one of them are giving you much of anything else. Like, they're not super great on defense. They're not creating. They're not playmaking. They're not doing that. But they will shoot it. And I think that if you can get players like that on cheap contracts, again, it's not someone that has to be heavily in the rotation, but if they can earn a spot at a desperate area on this team, I think those are players worth taking a look at. And so we've got the draft coming up tomorrow. I'm sure there's going to be craziness that goes on both with the Pelicans and just in the NBA and things like that. But it should be exciting. I can't wait for it. And I'm tired of the Twitter rumors. Let's just get to it. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. We'll be coming to you with a post-draft show, probably Friday. We'll get that up But as always, appreciate the support. Follow us on Twitter at Garrick_Rattler, my brother at Raphael_Rattler, NO basketball, no E, and follow us on YouTube as well. We're trying to grow this page up, and we'll see you guys after the draft.